Well, our boy Jason here, he blew a head gasket, squirting out water between the cylinder head and the block, and he ain't happy about it. But that's no biggie, we fixed it, and that's in another video. Meanwhile, while the head's off, we blew it apart and cleaned it. We lapped the valves, we removed the carbon deposits, and we gasket matched it to the intake. And then we also replaced the hydraulic lifters and put it all back together. So this is the head gasket that come out of Jason's truck, and upon further examination you can see it cracked right here near the water jacket, and that's why it was leaking. It was squirting out the side in between the block and the cylinder head, right there in that water jacket. It's a real good thing that nothing else had burned through and it got water or anything into the cylinders. This pretty much was an easy fix. First thing we're going to do is disassemble everything and clean it. And we're using mineral spirits throughout this project. We're using mineral spirits with some aluminum and brass brushes and sometimes nylon brushes. And we're just cleaning everything up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I've cleaned it. It's really messy. I've cleaned it pretty good. I'm going to have to go over it with a very light grit Roll-Lock or something to get the rest of that head gasket residue off. Put that back. So when you're taking this apart, they say that when you're putting it together, you start in the middle and work your way out. Of course, when you're taking it apart, you start at the end and work your way in. So we're going to do that. What I like to do is take a piece of cardboard and label every bolt that I want to go back in its original place, which in this valve train, I want to be sure I keep up with everything, and I take off each intake and exhaust rocker and have them in their own little place, and I'm gonna clean them and put them all right back together. I want everything to go right back where it was because it was mated. It started its life this way. It's surfaced itself out right where it is. So I want everything to go back. Same for the bolts. You could probably mix them up, but why? Why risk it? So I'm going to take them out, put them in here, clean them individually, put them back, clean the parts individually, put it all back together. When cleaning this stuff, you don't want to use a brush on that mated surface. You use your finger. Do not use an abrasive brush on the mated materials. We're going to save this piece of cardboard for our exhaust valves and our intake valves when we do this part of the head. Front plate is clean. Yes. As I disassemble my valve train and clean it, I'm going to bring it here and just set it all out for reassembly. Hey guys, real quick, wanted to talk about the tools used in this process. This is an old timer's tool, and I've generally used this to compress the valve springs and take the keepers out, and it works well for that. But getting it all back together, I had issues with it before, and I think some members of the group had issues with it before, but it's hard to get it compressed enough, pushing the valve thread and get the keepers back on. So we opted to do the rent-a-tool from Advanced Auto or O'Reilly's, just a valve spring compressor tool. These tools are great to use for when you have the cylinder head on a table and you can work on it freely. If it was in the engine bay on the block and you stuffed rope in there to keep the valves from dropping, and all you wanted to do was replace the valve seals, that tool is good at doing that. It may be a trick or a challenge to get it compressed enough, put them back in. I think some have had issues with that.
Yeah, our issue was it was a little tricky getting the keepers out, but getting them back in,
getting it compressed enough to get them in.
The spring, it felt like it wouldn't compress enough.
Yeah.
To get the spring down far enough to get the keepers in.
So take it for what you will. Your mileage may vary, but these are the two tools that we used. One more, there we go. Keepers.
Lord have mercy, man.
Look at the gunk. Show the camera. Show the people. When it comes to these valve seals, you can just wiggle them with a pair of pliers like you see here and just pull them right off. They may be a little bit stubborn, it depends on the age of the motor, but that one, look at it, it came right off. Same for this one. Just do a little wiggle, 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 wiggle and pull, and it'll come off. Josh has cleaned up a lot of the cylinder head. Now he's working on getting the carbon buildup. He's using his Dremel to clean all this up. Okay guys, we're lapping valves. We've already done number 1 and 2 on the exhaust. Now we're about to do number 3, and we thought we'd bring you along with us to show you how we're doing it today. The lubrication. Okay, when putting on the lapping compound, a little goes a long way. So you just want to put it on where you want it to do the work. You don't want to get any on the valve stem itself. As it goes down in the shaft, it could grind out the hole. You don't want that. So you want to be careful with the placement of this stuff. Keep you some rags on hand. A lot better looking. This is what one looks like before. So guys, we were just in here lapping this valve one time, and as you can see, there's still some slight pitting and things. We're just trying to do the best we can, so we're going to do it again. Sometimes you may have to do these twice,
or 3 times,
until you get the result, which really we want it to look as good as this one. And this one was the first time around, and it looks better, but it could be better. And I don't know if we'll get all the pitting out, but we're just trying to go for a way better seal than it had. Okay guys, we just finished lapping all the valves, and we put our valves and their springs in each individual bag, and they're labeled exhaust 1, exhaust 2, exhaust 3, 4 on the intake side. And we've cleaned the head thoroughly with mineral spirits, and then we brake cleaned everything and dried it out. And what we're going to do next is put on these valve seals.
We're going to be installing the valve stem seals into the head. And I have found, a lot of people get a socket that's just big enough to go right on that edge. A 15mm regular socket, deep enough in there that it goes right in. And then on the other side, you're not messing up your spring and rubber on there. That's it.
So we had just completed the entire exhaust side, so now we're doing the intake number 1, and I'm lubricating everything up, and we're putting it together, putting the springs on. Josh is getting the spring compression tool ready, and he's going to compress it. And here we go with these little tiny keepers. If I could suggest something, it's going to be hard with the greasiness, but if you could have a magnet handy, it would be helpful in case one goes flying. But I got them in there, assembly lube is sticky like honey. Got them in there and we release the pressure on the tool, and there they are. When you get it all put together, you'll want to take a hammer and tap it all real good just to make sure everything is well seated.
All right, so we went in and we lapped all the valves, and we came back and we did this leak test. So what you do is you fill it up. We got mineral spirits in there. You can use gas. You can use water, but I wouldn't. So we tested all 4 combustion chambers, and we got bubbles on this one and bubbles on this one. And what I mean by that is you take air, and once you get your fluid in there, you blow air into your port. What you're looking for is little bitty air bubbles getting past your valve, in between your valve and the valve seat. And that means that you've got a place where the valve is not perfectly sealing off. No air in there and you get no bubbles, then your valve is seated. And we had an intake and an exhaust that we had that bubbled after we lapped the valve, so we had to go back in, re-lap them, and now we just retested and we have no bubbles in our combustion chamber.
I've been cleaning on the cylinder head valve train, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Okay, so this is the back of the engine, back of the cylinder head, and this would be the front of the cylinder head. And I took the pieces off one at a time and dipped them and cleaned them and brought them back to the table so that I wouldn't mix the order up. The main thing I want to talk about is these 2 rails, because this is how your oil comes from the block right here. And it is then, it goes across and fills up both rails, fills up the rocker arms, fills up your hydraulic lifters. What a lot of people do, of course, they get them mixed up when they take them apart like this. The furthest most hole, of course, goes back here. And over here, this shaft's a little different. It rides against the bolt. It's actually gonna sit in there and be like, one's further up. Well, as you can see, one's a little shorter. This one rides against the bolt, and there's that. Now, these both, you can't turn them the wrong way or upside down because of the oil holes. This oil hole has to mate up with this because the oil comes in and goes and fills this up. So you can't put it in upside down. It has to be the right way. Same for this one. It has an oil hole to fill this rail up. It has to go towards the center of the head. And if you move these, put them in the wrong way, you'll starve your hydraulic lifter of oil and it'll tap. So what we're going to do now is lubricate everything up with some assembly lube, put it back together before I mess it up. Okay, so what we got here are some milling hydraulic lifters, and these actually came primed already. They're actually really hard. You'll know they're primed because they will not collapse. However, I have one that was a little bit squishy, just a little, barely. And I was curious, were they primed? And found out. I found out real quickly that they were, because oil's coming out. Now, not primed, so 6 of them I'm going to leave alone, and 2 of them I'm going to show you how to prime them. I already have a video on this, but you may not have seen it, so we're just going to do it again on these 2. I'm going to put this light behind it so that you can see it release the bubbles. Basically, it's raining on the roof. That's it. Hard. I'm going to put them all in here and let them hang out until we're ready to put them in the truck. Okay, so you can use some wire cutter pliers to get right up under the lip of these old lifters, and you can pry them out. That's what I'm going to do here before we put the new ones in. Just pry them out. So look at this. These are all the old beat up lifters. Boy, they've seen a lifetime. So we got our new ones that we primed earlier. That tastes good. Alright, so I'm going to take them and you can just press them in with your hands and you'll feel it click when you push it in. You just push them down, give it another good push, and you'll feel it snap into place. Okay, in this next step, do not forget to put a little bit of black oil resistant RTV right here on the end caps, the front and rear caps of the valve train. This is where a lot of people see a little bit of oil leaking around those 2 front head bolts behind the timing cover, and they think something's wrong, like it's leaking through the bolt. Really, that's what it is. Alright, so here we are, just lubricating everything, and we're going to throw the cam in, and we're going to start putting on the valve train. Okay, so the book will tell you that this rear cam seal, to put a little sealant on it, and there's been some guys that have done that and it leaked, and it probably leaked because these are metal discs with a rubberized coating on them when they're brand new. This one feels very hard, like it's hard plastic, but it's metal. But I'm saying the rubber has over time just gotten hard. So and this is all we got, we don't have one. So I think I will put a little skim coat with this black RTV on it. This is looking good. That's looking good. Put that dude in there before I tighten everything up. Oh Lord. There we go. And when I tighten everything up, should be good. Okay, according to our little piece of paper here, our rocker arm, 13 pounds at first. So I'm gonna turn our deal here. So hard to see these little numbers in chrome. So we're at 10, 11, 12, 13 foot-pounds. And we're going to start in the middle and work our way out. Everything is right, we're ready. Hand tight, got the goop where it needs to be, everything's on. Hey! Hey! Good afternoon.
How you? How you been?
Good.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
That's everything on that step. Next step, 20 foot-pounds. 20. Looks like it's only 20. 20 foot-pounds. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Everything is torqued. Okay, so what I like to do before I put this front plate gasket on, I like to put a skim coat of the gray RTV on it, the kind that is coolant resistant, oil resistant. They say it's 100% silicone, but there must be some more magic in there because it's resistant to almost everything except gas. So I'm putting some on there and I'm going to affix it to the front plate. Just like that. And now we need to put the front plate on. But first, we're going to lubricate the cam just a little bit. You can never go wrong with too much lubrication in the right spots. Then we're going to put some on our seal so that we don't tear anything as we push it on. Slicky, slicky. Yeah. Here we go. We're just going to try to push it on, wiggle it. Lubrication really helps. There we go. Okay, remember this bolt right here? It came out from right here. Well, we're not going to use that bolt. Let me show you something. So if the cam gear were to be on and that bolt was there, and let's just say you wanted to swap your hydraulic lifters for the mechanical lifters, you would have to remove your cam gear, take your timing belt off just to get the bolt out so that you can get the first cap off that goes with the valve train. And it will not fit through the hole. Like a 12mm socket will not fit through the hole. You could probably grind it out, but I'm not sure if there's a balance or anything. You'd have to do them all. So while it's apart, we are going to replace it with an Allen head bolt that I've gotten from Tractor Supply. I'll put the link in the description. I think it's an 8mm by 20mm by 1.25. And we're just going to put that, see how it'll fit through there? So in the future, if you want to do a valve train swap, you could simply undo that bolt and pull it through the sprocket. You wouldn't have to take the front plate off. You wouldn't have to mess with the gasket for the water and all of that jazz. So we're just gonna put this in there, snug it up, and then we're going to torque everything down. Okay, let's put our cam gear on and pay special attention to the little dowel hole. Everything's lined up 12 o'clock, our cam gear was, and it has the dowel. So there's also a hole punched out in the washer. We're going to situate that onto the dowel, and we're going to put in our bolt and screw it in and get ready to torque it down. I can't remember how I did this before, how I did this on a bench before. I think I used a rubber filter wrench and held it still, or maybe a flywheel wrench and held it still. Here I'm trying to use a screwdriver, and that's just not going to work. I tried it a few times and then I just had to call for some help. And what we decided to do here was use an old fan belt and some vice grip pliers. Josh applied his Gorilla Grip and held it still so that I could get the torque that I needed, the torque spec met. And here we are just checking to make sure everything rotates like it's supposed to.